Welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined by marathon swimmer Andy Donaldson, a man who has taken on some of the world's most extraordinary swims, from Manhattan to Maui, and used each one to shine a light on the health of our rivers and oceans. We talk purpose, resilience, and why water has the power to bring people together. It's a brilliant conversation, so let's get on with it. Welcome, Andy. I'm really delighted to have you on the podcast, and I've got a funny story which we'll get into in terms of you and an event I went to last night. But should we start by a brief introduction? I think many people in the swimming community know you, but it'd be worth, I think, just if you could kind of introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your background.
For sure. And firstly, thank you for having me here, Dave. I'm excited for this chat. I'm Andy Donaldson. I'm a marathon swimmer, originally from Scotland. I live in Australia now, and over the last 5 years, I've been doing, well, as the title of the podcast perhaps implies, I've been doing some cool swims all around the world.
Effing cool swims. So yeah.
Effing cool swims around the world. I've been in that fortunate position to travel, to experience these amazing things, but quite often, a lot of the time, which I'm sure we'll cover, meet amazing people along the way as well. So yeah, I've been fortunate to do swims like the Ocean 7, swimming around Manhattan Island, around the island of Maui, a whole bunch of ultra swims, relay challenges like in the Middle East earlier this year in Ibiza. So it's been a really exciting couple of years, and it's something that came to me a bit later in life. I grew up as a pool swimmer in Scotland, but made that transition to open water in my mid-20s, and I suppose haven't really looked back. I absolutely love it.
Well, listen, we're going to talk about some of the swims that you've done, and I'm really interested to kind of hear about those. But you mentioned Maui, so just before we sort of started recording, I was sort of telling you that this swimming world is a very small one. So I interviewed Ryan and Stefan from Hawaii, who talked about the Maui swim, and I don't know, were you there with Amber? But they mentioned Amber's name. And last night I was actually on a panel for Surfers Against Sewage, and there was Amber on the panel, and I was like, well, I've never met her before, but I was sort of able to talk to her a bit. They've just done, her and a few other swimmers have just done this incredible swim down the Thames, which was basically done to kind of raise awareness about the state of the Thames. And actually poor Amber got very, very sick at the end. So, the part I played in that swim is I've been monitoring water quality in Henley, and had reached out to Surfers Against Sewage and said, do not let them swim in Henley because the water quality is so poor. So, Henley was one of the stretches where they actually got out and sat on a boat. But there was a brilliant film which was at this event last night, and towards the end, the credits were rolling, and I saw your name on it, and I was like, well, what's that all about? So I asked Toby, who was one of the swimmers, and he said, well, I think it was Andy's idea in the first place. So should we just start with the Thames swim, because it sort of feels that serendipity is telling us that that's a great place to start. So
for sure.
How are you involved with that Thames swim?
Well, it was my idea.
But you were sensible enough not to then swim in it. So
yeah, well, I suppose I'll put a bit of background to it. So you mentioned Amber and Toby, the guys at Surfers Against Sewage. You also mentioned Lewis Pugh. Now, going back about 20 years, Lewis Pugh was the first person to swim down the length of the Thames, from the source all the way down past the Houses of Parliament. And he was advocating for cleaner waters back then. He has kind of paved the way for the rest of us being one of those real trailblazers in that purposeful sport world, where you're not just using sport for your own personal means, you're using it as a platform to advocate for really important causes. And so he did it back 20 years ago. And in my own journey, I've been starting to try to do similar things, advocating for things close to my heart. So mental health being one, the health of our oceans and water quality, simple messages such as the importance of community and teamwork and it's never too late to pursue your dreams, whatever it is. And I think it was November 2024, I paid a visit to some friends in London. I had one of my closest friends was getting married out quite near where you are. He was getting married in, oh God, uh, Bribery? Uh,
Don't worry.
the Cotswolds. The
The
Cotswolds.
Cotswolds. There we go.
And at the same time was this march for clean water down the Thames because of all the sewage pollution issues in the UK and all the water companies pumping untreated sewage out into the riverway, like the waterways, the rivers, the lakes, into the sea. And Amber and I had earlier that year swum around Maui advocating for the oceans in Epic Swim Maui. And I said to her, we should do something here in our own backyard where we could really make a statement. I think we should swim down the Thames as a relay non-stop from the source down to the Houses of Parliament. And instead of this being a march along the river, I think it would send a louder message if we actually got in there and got our hands dirty, essentially. And so we started down that process of, right, who do we pull together and who can we get as an organization to support this and really turn this from being just a concept or a swim into something bigger and having these tangible outcomes. We could measure the quality as we go down. We could try advocate for change and really shout this loud, clear message that something has to be done. And so Surfers Against Sewage turned out to be that organization. And we had this idea of having representation from all around the UK, a male and a female swimmer from each of the countries. So Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, and Wales being the home nations. And that's really how it all began at the start of this year. And so, yeah, fast forward a few months, and I think it would have been about July or August. Um, the date of the swim was falling at the start of September, and my sister was due to get married at the start of September. And she was, quite naturally getting quite stressed in the lead up to her wedding. And I don't think it helped with the fact that her brother might be swimming down the length of the Thames from source to the House of the Parliament. I think it was about 240 kilometres
It's a long way.
in some potentially very polluted waters. And I was the celebrant at her wedding, so I think she was pretty nervous that I'd come as this shell of a human being to her wedding and not really be, not just physically unable to be the best version of myself, but mentally as well and spiritually. So it was one of the few times that she asked me and she said, "Look, I've been so supportive in your swimming career. I'd back you to the ends of the earth, but for this one time, can you just be here and help me?" And you know, it was a difficult decision, but it was also not because exactly she's been, you know, a rock in my life all through my journeys, all through my highs and lows, and there was no way I was not going to be there for her when she needed it most. And so, yeah, I ended up stepping out, and we got a brilliant replacement. Probably a bit of an upgrade, I think, in terms of the Scottish male, a gentleman by the name of Callum McLean. phenomenal guy and so passionate about, water cleanliness, ocean health, water stewardship. He even speaks Gaelic, so like it's just he's like the perfect Scotsman for this. Like he was just, yeah, it was like a glove and he slotted in and got on really well with the team. And yeah, I think at the start of September, Amber Keegan, Toby Robinson, Hector Pardo, you know, all this team that went down did a fantastic job and covered the whole distance in about 3 days and really sent a powerful message out to the not just the UK but to the world about protecting this what should be a right for everyone, I think, in the UK, which is clean water.
I mean, it comes across so powerfully. So there is a film which was premiered at the event last night, and I'll make sure I put a link when this podcast goes live to the film. I think what was really really incredible was using sport to kind of raise the profile. And one of the comments I made on the panel was it is brilliant to have young people kind of championing this as well. So often when we're on the riverbank doing our testing, it tends to be sort of people with grey hair, older generational people who are doing it. And one of the things I've been wanting to do is to kind of find a way of reaching a younger audience. And I think it's fabulous, and I think it was very powerful. And I think, you made the right choice for your sister, because as I say, Amber got very sick. So she actually ended up in hospital. And that is the worst thing that could have happened to you for your sister's wedding. So, a great shout. But I think, one of the things that Toby said was, actually using events to highlight the issue is something that they learn, or you all learned from the last Olympics, in terms of the focus that was on the Seine in terms of cleaning that up. And he's already set up a new swimming event for next year, I think, which I'm hoping he's going to come on to the podcast and talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds awesome.
The
So
Lords and Commons Cup.
the law, and I'm sort of pondering, should I enter that? And I don't know if they've got a slow person's category in that, but the fact he
You,
said
you
it's
might
time.
you might go quicker if you want to get out of the water,
Well,
So-
exactly, but he did say it's tidal, so we're trying to aim to have the tide behind us, and that's my favourite sort of swimming. But it was really powerful, that idea. And I guess what's sort of interesting about sort of how I connected with you is I saw, I mean, it was coincidental. So I just saw you on Instagram, saw you doing some of these swims, and I think you were talking about kind of water quality in some of your posts as well. So I I think this is the thing that I really kind of want to embrace, is this notion of swimmers swimming in incredible places. Like the Thames is incredible. It's this
Mm.
awesome river, which we've kind of mistreated. But swimming in incredible places and raising the issues that are in those water bodies, or if there are no issues, trying to make sure that people kind of keep these waterways pristine. So
Well, I think there's a real opportunity to shine a light on things, whether that's an issue with water quality, whether that's all the way through to how beautiful a location is. Like swimming, if you could swim past Henley, it's such a beautiful part of the world.
totally. I mean,
Beautiful part of the world.
I was down there. I mean, I used to swim in it, and now I don't. But I was down there with someone talking about water quality. I just looked at it, and it's the most perfect swimming location
Mm.
that you could have. This very long stretch of river, which is very straight. It's ideal. Yeah. So totally agree.
But I think the idea of using sport as that medium to get messages out there. The world, there's so much noise at the moment. You've got, these eccentric billionaires that are taking up all of the oxygen in the room, saying one thing and it's just news all over the headlines and they take over. there needs to be some positive things that break through. And I feel like these challenges can do that, these events or these amazing human feats, and they can be used as that platform to generate like to capture attention and shine it wherever you need it. Because the old mediums, your your media houses, they're all a lot of them are controlled by very few, and it's say what you will about social media, it's allowed everyone's voice to be heard. And I think you can amplify that when you bring the right people together, when you do something amazing as a team and have the right intention behind it, and that's where Epic Swim Maui really thrived. I think that's where the swim down the Thames really thrived. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in the future to make a difference by people coming together to do something that they're so passionate about and can be you can be part of that journey as well. Like, I think it's very hard. There's all these scientists doing amazing things, but no one hears about what they're doing because yeah, there's just a
Well,
lot
look, and
of things
I think
happening.
what was brilliant about the Thames Swim is that community aspect. So,
Mm,
Surfers Against Sewage, they had been sponsoring a bunch of community teams. I know Kirsty, quite well. We sort of turned up to many events together. But what we saw was this collaboration between citizen scientists and the
mm,
swimmers, So, and for the first time, it sort of felt like actually the work we're doing was kind of really being amplified in the most positive way possible. And it's one of the things I turned to Toby, and he was talking about the swim event, and I said, look, we will support you, the kind of swimmers, in any way you want. Anything. Well, I'll go anywhere in the world to support anybody in terms of providing information and data and understanding if I can, because it's that sort of beautiful collaboration between the kind of the people who are kind of going and swimming in these events, and then the citizen scientists, not
mm.
just scientists, but citizen scientists who are kind of looking at data. So I think there's something really powerful in there, which we kind of should think about a bit more as kind of campaigners.
Well, and I'll use Epic Swim Maui as an example. So, Epic Swim Maui, the whole idea was bringing people together to provide a voice to protect our oceans. That was the call to action. And so you had the swimmers swimming around the island, 220 kilometers in 14 days. You had the government officials, state senators that got involved with it, that backed it. You brought the scientists involved to, do the testing of the water quality and microplastics pollutions. Like, if that happens out in the middle of the Pacific, what's it going to be like in Europe or, the Indian Ocean or whatever? You had the indigenous leaders that came together and shared from Hawaiian water culture. That they've got that very incredible way of looking at the world where it's very much in harmony or making decisions with 7 generations in mind, that land meets the sea and everything in harmony and the aloha spirit. And so you had that all happening with the backbone of it being this challenge to swim around the island. And it was filmed for a documentary. So many stories shared, different people's input and opportunity to tell the world what they're doing. I think it's just really, I think it's just starting, and I hope that it can continue. Like, the idea of Epic Swim Maui was that was the first of a series of ultramarathon expedition swims around the world, and Robbie Seeger, the gentleman, the brain behind it, he wanted to go to Palau next, and wherever there was a need, Palau being under existential threat from rising sea levels, and go and tell the story there and swim around that island, or go to I don't know, Sardinia and advocate for making more marine protected areas around the island. Like there's an opportunity to exactly like this. It's so exciting, and I think I'd like to hope that the missing pieces, the who supports this, who funds this. Robbie wanted to get that backing from the United Nations and tap into some of that um, sort of social responsibility money and have like a United Nations of open water team where you had representatives from all around the world. So the message goes globally and you have these ambassadors that all come together. They're doing their individual challenges, but all come together, once every 2 years to do something because, that's a really powerful message as well. Like none of these issues, they can't be solved alone. They have to be addressed together. And so, yeah, you have a lot of aligned messages that are just, I think, really fitting for the state of the world that we currently live in.
I think it's amazing, amazing. I'm so glad to hear that sort of Epic Swim Maui might be part of a series. I think, you know, again, having witnessed like the swim down the Thames, and talking to Ryan and Stefan about the Maui swim, and then Amber last night, you kind of like, that this is the right thing to be doing, and the water needs a champion. It needs champions. It needs all of these things to be kind of raised. You talk about social media as well. So, you know, actually using kind of content to raise the profile with, I think, sort of young athletes is a phenomenal way of kind of breaking through. So, when you look at the number of people following you on Instagram, that's sort of TV viewing numbers. So I was in Timor Leste last week, and I mentioned to a lady there that I was chatting to. Oh my God, she's like, he's amazing. You're
What,
kind of,
me?
yeah, you. So yeah, but I think it's really good, and I'm so I think you should all feel incredibly proud of yourselves in terms of what you're doing, because you know without it, and as you say, without sort of stitching all the right community parts together, we will never achieve anything. So this is actually about a kind of grassroots movement, because the politicians and the corporations are never going to cede ground unless they are forced to. And we, as the grassroots, have to be the people who do this.
Well, and how do you make change happen? Like the voice needs to be loud enough. And when you have these people coming together, that voice starts to get bigger. It starts to get bigger. You start to galvanize and impact more people. Like you mentioned your friend in Timor Leste. You just don't even know that that's the power of the internet and social media. You don't know who you're reaching and the lives that you're touching or the people that you're inspiring. And I think we're just scratching the surface. I think we're only just at the beginning here of this journey.
I agree. And I mean, I guess if I like, I'm sat here in a little building in Henley, and I've got a podcast which I started because I had this sort of epiphany in a river that the river was perfect, and why weren't there more perfect rivers in the world? And I wanted to talk to everybody about it. So we're all here, I think, or a lot of us are here just doing stuff. And it is like you say, there's a sort of snowball which can happen around all of this. So, as the coincidences of talking to Ryan and Stefan, and that's meeting Amber, then talking to you, I'm like, well, maybe there's more in it than just coincidence, to be honest with you. But it's all part of a snowball, I think. And we really all have to be the change that kind of happens. And what better way to kind of think about making change than doing the things that we love, like swimming and exploring incredible places to be.
And to get to do it with amazing people.
Totally, totally, totally. And it's one of the things that, you know, I'm always struck by is how many incredible people there are in the swimming community as well. The people who swim outdoors, you know, I talked to Amy Enyon, and what's really kind of interesting about her was the way she talked about the water and how it kind of soothes her. And I mean, I'd love to chat a bit about mental health as well and your kind of views around that. But you know, and we talked about grief, and it just the water is healing. I mean, and you know, the
Mm.
more I get into understanding water, the more you realize it is this incredible magical element that, you know, is part of us. And you know, when we're in it, we kind of feel very differently about the world, I think.
100%. And yeah, I mean, that's, if I look at my own journey, maybe similarly to how Amy was describing things, it was a journey of healing that got me back in. Yeah, I spent a number of years outside of the water. I'd grown up as a pool swimmer who had aspirations to race on the international stage, race for Great Britain, and I ultimately fell short of those for a number of reasons. And swimming was, for a long time, a source of pain.
Right.
It was you know, something I didn't really want to do. I was burnt out from it. I had fallen short. I felt a bit of guilt and shame that I hadn't reached my potential in it, and I'd maybe let people down that had believed in me in that journey. And it wasn't until COVID came around that I got myself back into swimming and into the water purely as something to do during lockdown, and rediscovered this love for the water that I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And so, yeah, it's amazing what it can do.
So when you started re-swimming in COVID, is that when you started going more into open water swimming, or
I'd done a bit of open water living here in Australia. Like when you come here, you know, everyone's
yeah,
doing it, and it's just part of the fabric of what it means to be an Aussie. It's just incredible. So it wasn't completely new to me, but I wasn't, yeah, I just wasn't swimming. I'd quit my job at that point in time. I'd been backpacking around the world just before COVID. And yeah, you know, every morning with a friend and mentor of mine, a guy called Martin Smoothie, we would just swim 3 or 4 Ks up the coast, down here in Perth. And, you know, we'd always do it in the morning. The sun would just be coming up,
wow.
glassy conditions, and everything going on in your life just completely dissipates away. You are in the elements, immersed, alone with your own thoughts, something that's very rare these days. You're not connected in, you don't have your phone or your headphones on, and you're just there in the moment, out in the sea, and it's just amazing. It's the best feeling ever. And so in that journey, yes, it was great to be physically moving and active, and you get your endorphins from it. But from that sort of wellness, from that mental well-being perspective, and just that rejuvenation that you get in the water, and then added on top of that, going for the coffees afterwards, like the whole the whole
Course.
thing was just amazing, and I just realized how much I needed it in my life.
So is that the sort of spark that was then like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'm doing 3 or 4 K now. Let's go and find some longer swims to do, or what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't just jump straight up to doing an English channel off of that, but it was a sort of journey over the space of a year where myself and Martin, we actually started coaching people to get into the open water. We
Right,
loved it
right.
so much, we wanted to share it with others. And we were getting people in to pursue goals and be part of community. And those goals, they didn't have to be massive. They could be something simple as I want to do a triathlon, or I want to be comfortable in the ocean so I can swim with my kids. Like it was really, really nice stuff. And along the way, Martin had kind of pulled me aside one day and he's like, Andy, you're telling these people to go and pursue their goals. When are you going to start revisiting some of your own and setting yourself some challenges? And so that kind of kick-started this journey. And here in Western Australia, we've got this amazing event called the Rock Nest Channel Swim, 19.7 kilometers out to an island, beautiful, tropical island just off the coast here. And about 3,000 swimmers take it on annually, which is just
Wow.
mind-boggling, either as a solo doing the whole distance themselves or in a team of two or a team of four. And I thought, you know what, I'll get myself in shape and I just want to see what I could throw down here and um, have really give this a real good go. And so fast forward 10 months, it was a red hot field. There was a couple of guys on the Australian Dolphins team that were entered. I was by no means coming in as a favourite. I was this washed up swimmer who'd been retired and been partying and drinking for the last year when he was backpacking. So the expectations on me were quite low. But I came in and blitzed the field and won by over 700 meters.
Wow.
And so, and came within 4 minutes of the record, which in those conditions they weren't that favourable. So, coming off the back of it, I thought, well, A, I'm not bad at this long distance stuff. B, I've got a hunger to go on and do some more swims and just test myself and see. That was really when I realized that sport could be used as this platform. We'd been trying to share the learnings along the way, trying to tell others like it's not too late to pursue your dreams. And we'd raised, I think, about $12,000 for a mental health charity along the way.
Amazing.
And I just thought, I want to do more of this. And I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to combine all of this together. And, that was really where it began for me, this next step going into the Ocean Seven and what's happened beyond.
So can you just tell people for those who don't know what it is, what the Ocean Seven is?
Yeah, so the Ocean Seven is a collection of channel swims around the world that are considered to be, I suppose, the toughest and the most iconic swims, going from 14 kilometers, like Spain to Morocco, all the way up to the longest, which is Molokai to Oahu over in Hawaii. You've got cold swims like Ireland to Scotland or the English Channel from England to France, a swim in Japan between Honshu and Hokkaido, and I think the last two are Catalina Island to the mainland over in the US and the Cook Strait in New Zealand. They're all, different temperatures. You're not wearing a wetsuit in any of these. They're under the traditional marathon swimming rules. And I suppose naively set out to try and do all seven of these in the space of a year. I was looking, being from Scotland, I was reading up on the English Channel. I was like, oh, the Ocean Seven looks kind of cool. And
Yeah.
no one, no one's ever done it in a year. Like maybe I could do that. And maybe we could use it as this really exciting challenge and journey to inspire others, share positive messages around hope and the importance of teamwork and never giving up. Let's raise money for mental health. And the more records I can break along the way, the more buzz we can generate and shine it on all of these amazing things and the community around it has helped to make this possible. And so that's what I set out to do in summer of 2022. I definitely bit off more than I could chew. It was definitely a build the plane in the sky kind of um, adventure, but it was the most amazing year of my life. And we ended up coming away with achieving our goals. I completed it in 355 days. I
Wow.
broke three world records along the way, the speed record for New Zealand and the overall records for, you know, completing it in the lowest number of days, and if you add up all the swims, the lowest amount of time, or the smallest amount of time as well, cumulatively. And yeah, it was it was just quite the adventure.
I mean, and there's a tiny number of people who've done the Ocean Seven, you know, anyway. So to have done it in a year, I mean, like most people I know who've kind of taken on these challenges, they're sort of training at least for sort of 6 months for each of these challenges. So, to do it in a year, all of them, I mean, it is quite an incredible feat because they are really, really tricky swims, aren't they?
Well, that's it. So you want to give yourself the best possible chance and do them at the best times of the year. So there's only a certain number of windows and slots available. And some of the swims had, you know, waiting lists of several years. And so that was a challenge I just hadn't even considered. And I didn't want to come in over the top of other people. It's not, it's a very unsportsmanlike, unethical thing to do. So I was saying to each of the organizers, I'll come out there and I'll wait. I'm in the fortunate position where I've got a bit of speed and I could perhaps go on days that maybe someone else might not be able to, just purely because the window is short and you have to really make the most of it and go out on essentially a less than ideal day. So it was taking anything that I could get in order to get this done. And so that made it even trickier, where some of these days and some of these swims were just shocking. And, I experienced, I like to think of myself as quite hardy and resilient. I definitely got pushed out of my comfort zones way more than I could have, even comprehended. Just, you can do all the preparation in the world for the distance or swimming at night or swimming in choppy conditions, but hearing news like, in the last 2 hours you've not gone anywhere, you've made no forward progress, like that just smashes you. Like it's just, yeah,
Well, I mean,
yeah, it's full on.
how do you cope with it? Because I guess like um unless you've done a kind of distance swim, it's quite difficult to understand like what's going through your head. And I mean, you're dealing with conditions, so I mean, and if you stop and think about the conditions, that can be quite uh, unnerving as well. So I was in, as I mentioned, Timor Leste last week and jumping into the sea, and then someone said, "You do realise it's 3 kilometers deep here," and you're kind of like, "Oh, three,"
Whoa.
So you suddenly like, "Oh, should I feel unnerved about that? I wish you hadn't said it. It all
What's
seems a bit."
underneath, and it's
But so you're having to do an awful lot, I guess, on these swims, kind of managing like how you feel, your motivations, whether you sort of feel unnerved or whatever about what's going on in terms of the war. I mean, how do you kind of deal with all of these things?
well, difficultly. No, it's a real interesting one, and I get asked a lot, how do you manage in the moment? And managing in the moment is resilience. Like, how do you respond to adversity when it arises? And I think for sure it has its place and it is an important thing. But if you're not prepared for these challenges, doesn't matter if you're the toughest guy in the world. Like if you've not prepared for the cold and you're trying to swim from Ireland to Scotland, you're not going to make it. You're not
No.
going to survive. If you're trying to swim the Molokai Channel and you've not prepared for big swells or swimming in the night, doesn't matter how tough you are, you're gonna really struggle. So the way that myself and my team always approached challenges was what can we encounter along the way that is going to give us a tough time? And how can we work back so that when we turn up on the on you know on the day and line up on the beach, we're as ready as possible for everything that's in our control. And for the things that aren't, we have a strategy in place so that we're not having to figure it out in the moment. We just, you know, we know exactly what's going on. So, the distance, easy. You can do your training, you get your muscle endurance and durability ready for that. Swimming in the cold, all right, I'm going to have to do cold water acclimatization. I'll take my ice baths. I'll swim in the Swan River during the middle of winter so I can really toughen up and get ready for these long spells that are going to be in potentially under 14-degree waters. Swimming at nighttime, I'm going to go practice that so that it's not something that's never happened to me and I'm experiencing it for the first time out there in a channel. Um, Sharks. It's unfortunately something that you might encounter, but we are in their territory. What can we do so that if we encounter one, we are not compromising our safety? What are the steps? And do we put a shark shield out there? When do we climb out? All these kind of things. What happens if I get seasick? What happens if I'm vomiting? Or what happens if how do I prevent getting sunburn or salt mouth or any of these things? Working back and trying to have a plan of attack for each of these so that you can go into a swim being robust, ready for the challenges ahead. Once you've done that, then you've given yourself the best possible chance of success. And if you encounter any kind of adversity, like if you think of your comfort zone as a circle, like you've tried to grow it bigger and bigger by doing all of this preparation, so that if anything happens to you, it's probably going to be inside here and you're going to be able to deal with it. But if something takes you outside of your comfort zone, hopefully it's not wildly beyond the perimeter that it's out. You can't deal with it. Like you are ready, you are prepared, and like that experience, I've been in swims like Pam to Shelley in Sydney where my boat has broken down. Some things you can't prepare for, you have to experience in time, and that builds that circle of comfort as well, so that in future swims, you've got something in your arsenal. You've got this prior experience that you can lean on and take forward with you for any adversity or challenges that you experience ahead.
Well, it's really interesting. It's just that whole idea of being properly prepared. I think is it's such a it's easy to say. It's obviously very difficult to do, but often people forget that. And I like the most enjoyable swims I've ever done is where I've trained and I'm really prepared for them.
Mm.
Um, where I haven't trained, which sometimes happens, they tend to be slightly more miserable affairs, to be honest with you. So,
Well, and I think that's a really good point. Like if someone pointed a gun at your head and said, run a marathon tomorrow, you'd probably be able to do it.
I think, yeah,
But it wouldn't be a very enjoyable experience
no,
versus, all right, I've done 6 months of training. I, know the course. I've rehearsed. I've got a nutrition plan. Like all of these things that make that whole experience a lot better and smoother. And you're not guessing when you're out there. It's all execution. and you're not having to burn any mental energy stressing, trying to react to something. You know, you think of the word react, it's got this emotional connotation behind it, like knee-jerk reaction, and you might not make the smartest decisions in those moments versus responding where, you know, it's got this connotation of being cool, calm, collected. I know what I'm going to do if this happens. All right, I can't keep my liquids down. I'm going to drop the dosage and just squish it in my mouth and spit it back out again. And that's still going to help me. And, you know, I'll return back to my feeding schedule as soon as I feel a bit better. Like
Very interesting.
being prepared.
Interesting. Well, we're sort of actually kind of running short on time, and we haven't talked about like the fucking coolest swim you've ever done. I mean, you mentioned Shelley there, and just by the way, Shelley Beach has to be one of my favorite places in the world. You know, I mean, what a stunning! I sat in Manly and watched whales jumping out of the morning, out of the water one morning, and then wandered up to. There's a little cafe on Shelley Beach, and I mean, it was so beautiful. But anyway, you swam in some fantastic places. Like, what are your top one or two that you swims you've done which you really really enjoyed and loved?
I mean, I know this is the name of the podcast, and I can't. I always struggle to whittle it down to one or two. I think swimming around Manhattan was pretty amazing.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Swimming around Manhattan, it's the 20 bridges swim. You go underneath all the bridges around Manhattan Island. It's 46 kilometers around, and I did that last September, so September 2024, and the goal was to break the world record for fastest time, which was 5 hours, and I think at the time it was 5 hours 45 or 5 hours 46, and which for people listening, 46 kilometers, that's a quick average pace. That's sub 60, that's sub 50 seconds per 100 meters. Now, before before people think oh, that doesn't add up, you mentioned swimming in the tides with the Lords and Commons. Same thing there, swimming in the tides.
Right.
And you got to time it exactly right so that you're getting benefit from the tides as you swim around Manhattan Island. And if you don't get to the right places by the right time, by the change of the tides, you're not just adding minutes onto your time, you're adding hours because you just cannot overcome Mother Nature. These
Right,
tides
right.
are about 6 k's an hour. They're
Wow.
ridiculous.
Well, that's
So
quite a boost if it's behind you as well, then, isn't it?
if you
So,
get it right, then you're laughing. And
wow.
so
Surfing.
if we're talking about cool swims, like we started at 2:30 in the morning. So I go down to the harbour, jump in a boat, little dinghy, and we're taken from the southwest side of the island all the way around to Upper East at Mill Rock, I think it is. That's where we started. And I felt like I was in the SAS doing some like Navy assault mission. Like we were going around Manhattan Island in the middle of the night on these dinghies. And it was just the most amazing thing to see the city that never sleeps from the water. And then jumping in and swimming, and I breathed to my left. We were going anti-clockwise. So, you know, I'm looking at
Wow.
Manhattan the
Wow.
entire way through. And we started off by going up through the Harlem River, and it gets a bit dark up there. And I don't want to offend any New Yorkers here, but it was probably the area that I was a bit more concerned about in terms of. I'd heard a few horror stories of what people had swum into up there, but it
Yeah,
was
I dread to think.
thankfully it was all right. And then you come into the Hudson under the George Washington Bridge, and it's just spanning across. Manhattan all the way over to New Jersey, and seeing that in the middle of the night, all lit up, uh, it's towering above you. Like it was just most incredible thing. And you've gone to the Hudson and all the way down. Just so special. Seeing the One World Tower, seeing the Statue of Liberty, the Brooklyn Bridge. It was just insane. And, we were getting updates on how we were tracking against the world record. The organizer of New York Open Water Swimming, Rondi Davies, she'd done this amazing job of creating this spreadsheet with all these locations and our target times of where we needed to be. And for much of it, we were actually quite far behind. I was having a less than average swim, let's just say. I was not really firing on all pistons. I'd been a bit ill. I actually think I had COVID, but I was sort of slugging out this swim. And the real turning point came at halfway where we were actually, I think, 10 minutes off the record pace,
10 minutes.
10 minutes behind it. But Jay Prashal, who's been my handler in all my swims, we communicate using a whiteboard. And he wrote -10 on the whiteboard and showed it to me. And I had read that as we're 10 minutes ahead of the record. And so I looked up and like I'd been having this really average swim and I saw that and I was like, oh shit,
Wow.
yeah. Like, yeah, we're on here. And I shouted up and I was like, yeah. And he's just like scratching his head and Rondi Davis is on the boat, the organizer, and she's like, why did he react like that? And she's like, oh, I think he thinks he's ahead of the record. And so he flips around the whiteboard and he meant to write a +10. And he's not. So they're like, crap, what do we do? Do we tell him? Like, we bear the bad news? And, um, you know, the morning traffic had started to pick up. So they couldn't get the boat in close enough. I was with a kayaker, but they couldn't get the boat in close enough to give this updated news. So they decided to just wait and see what happened. And sure enough, I managed to claw back. I had the second wind and clawed back a whole bunch of time so that by the time the next update came around, I actually was ahead of the record, but maybe only by 2 or 4 minutes. And
Wow.
so, like Sir Alex Ferguson calls it, it was squeaky bum time. It was like squeaky bum time for the last hour or so, just trying to hold pace and knowing that it could go either way. This whole swim, this record attempt is really on a knife edge. And fortunately enough, I did manage to hold on and I think went under it by 4 minutes or maybe a little bit less, might have been 2 minutes, I can't remember. But yeah, quite a stressful situation. And yeah, one of
Mm.
those ones you're holding on for dear life until the end, but we managed to
But
do it.
but you got the record, so congratulate. I mean that's an incredible story, and talk about like one wonders what would have happened if you had realised what was going on. So
Bit of
you
fortune.
might have, yeah. So no, that's fascinating. And are there any other swims that you kind of would like to honourable mentions?
Well, this how long have we got here? I mean, Epic Swim Maui, in terms of an event that had it all, was truly stunning. 14 days swimming around the island of Maui, past waterfalls, these incredible cliffs that came down to the ocean, over some of the most pristine coral in the world, beautiful crystal clear waters, amazing company as well. Like we had 14 of the world's best ultramarathon swimmers doing this together, swimming in a pack side by side, really demonstrating that unity when we're swimming for the oceans. Like that was something super special. And whenever the documentary's ready for that, like I encourage everyone to give that a
Oh,
watch. Like that was
definitely.
super cool. And whew, I'll just list out a few others. I swam around Ibiza the other week with Natalie Pohl, German swimmer. That was amazing. We did it as a duo.
And you
Took
got
us
a
30
record
hours.
there as well, didn't you? Or
Record there. I don't think anyone's even contemplated swimming around Ibiza, so that was really cool. Swam around the Kingdom of Bahrain in the Middle East. That was a team of four, and that was super special. We had two amazing Arabic women in the team, two Arabic female Muslims, which I think really pushed the needle in terms of women's sport in that part of the world, which was really amazing. Um, New York was obviously really cool. Uh, Rottnest is a beautiful place. Sweden, surprisingly enough, I'd love to do something there at some point because, yeah, it's a different water where it's more brackish and you're out there in, the Baltic part of the world. But I think there's a beauty in that ruggedness, which maybe having grown up in Scotland, I can resonate with. Um, and yeah, maybe doing something in Scotland one time, I think would be super special. Swimming from Ireland to Scotland was amazing, but maybe another thing closer to home there, I think would be nice and special too.
amazing, amazing. Well, listen, it's been such a pleasure chatting to you. I feel incredibly inspired. I mean, as I say, the coincidence of all of this has made this conversation even more special. So, I really appreciate you coming and chatting, and
Thank you for having me.
really look forward to the Epic Swim Maui documentary. I look forward to some of the other swims that you're planning. And as I said to Toby yesterday, if there's anything that I can do to help or support, then please let me know.
100%. I think there will be, and this is this is where it begins. These conversations, getting excited about future challenges, getting the word out there. Like we need good people and coming together, and that's what I see happening. These similarly like-minded people that are passionate. They're almost naturally getting drawn together. So that's
Gravitating,
really
yeah.
they're gravitating. That's the word. They're gravitating together. So it's an exciting time. I think it's an exciting time.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to press stop.